Why isn't you coming?
I am going to the temple.
We have made the temple off limits.
Hey folks, All Out the One here. Welcome to another review. Today I'm going to have a quick look at the Cold Steel Pocket Bushman. Just received this knife. I have been thinking about buying one since its inception about 7 years ago, around that point. But after being out for a year or two, there were certain factors that were always putting me off buying one. Now my interest in buying one stemmed from the fact that I like the idea of having a folding knife option for the woods, and the way it's been marketed by Cold Steel, probably to their detriment, is that it's basically a replacement for a fixed blade knife, as in it's the closest thing you'll get to a fixed blade knife and the safety that such a blade provides. So as I was saying, there were several factors that were putting me off buying one. Famously, Nothing Fancy did a review of this and had the knife fail on him, and there are plenty of other reviews out there with this knife failing in various compromising positions, namely being batoned on the back of the blade and the handle with a big chunk of wood, which inevitably has ended up in the knife breaking in one way or another. And the other thing that was putting me off was the fact that it was a stainless steel blade initially, but this is a more recent addition. One of the problems on the original batch was the channel for the spring, for the locking spring mechanism. If you've watched the videos about the Cold Steel, you'll know everyone talks about this problem with the initial batch. And basically, the way the channel was shaped caused the tension spring to deform eventually. But I believe they straightened the channel out now, and that doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. I think one of the main problems with this knife is the fact that Cold Steel put these really high claims on it, saying that it's almost as safe as a fixed blade, almost as fail-safe, etc. Maybe they shouldn't have taken such a hard line there, but we'll see how it does out in the field. I've literally just received this knife today, so this is practically an unboxing. I've opened it and closed it a few times now, the knife that is, and just my initial thoughts. The handle is absolutely massive, no doubt about it there. I think it weighs in at around the 170, 180 gram mark. Haven't actually weighed it myself. But this is the Carpenter, let me just try and get the name of it. It's Carpenter CTS BD1 alloy, and that's the blade, which has been bead blasted, as you can see, and famously one folded piece of stainless steel forms the handle, and then you have this it's not a unique locking mechanism. There are other knives with this mechanism that predate the Pocket Bushman, in fact, but it is not a frequently used locking design. To disengage, as in to close the knife, you need to pull back on this section here, and then with the other hand just simply flip it closed. It's definitely not the fastest blade to deploy. I know this is brand new, so I'm sure it will loosen up a bit, but that's about as fast as I can open it at the moment with one hand. I mean, compare it to my Rat Cutlery Rat 1 super fast blade. Yeah, I mean, there's no comparison with respect to how fast it opens However, as you can see, the blade on the Bushman is a good bit longer. Furthermore, one factor that put me off using this as a woods knife is it's got a liner lock, which I'm not a huge fan of. If you go back further into my video history on my channel, then I've got a full review of this knife, and yeah, put it through its paces in the woods, batoning, all the rest of it, etc. I've got to say, I'd never personally use this to baton. I will be doing so in the test, but that's just to test out the overall structure of the knife, make sure I haven't got a dud, and just to show you guys what this is capable of. I would never normally, as I said, use a folding knife for batoning wood, because if I'm carrying a folding knife in the woods, then I've got an axe with me as well. Just my philosophy and way I use my tools, so I would never need to put my knife under that kind of stress. Usually, however, you know, in an emergency situation, it's good to know that it's up to the task. Another concern I had initially was overall comfort. I was just thinking to myself, yeah, those scales do not look particularly comfortable, especially for prolonged use. But I'll say this much, it is a large handle with a slightly rounded belly here, so it does give you a good purchase on this actually, and I can feel a little pressure, particularly on these two fingers here, but using a knife in the woods, I'm always wearing gloves anyway, so I'm sure that should deal with that issue. And yeah, it's surprisingly comfortable actually, so I'm glad that that's the case. As you can see, it's got a thumb stud here, which is actually on a flathead screw, so can be adjusted for the left-handed user also. Comes in the right-handed setup, or mine did anyway. As you can see, code steel, made in Taiwan, CTS BD1 alloy. I'm not entirely sure what that is. Hopefully it's quite corrosion resistant, I'm hoping, but as again, we'll see how it goes once I actually take it out into the woods. Blade profile, flat grind with a secondary bevel there. Not my favourite for woodwork, to be honest, but as I said, if I'm taking a folding knife into the woods, then I'll also have a saw and an axe, so this should just be for light whittling basically, and opening stuff, cutting cordage. Also be interesting to see how this steel holds up, as in edge retention wise. Now I can already put a negative on this knife, and that is the fiddliness of the closing system. You know, it's definitely not ideal, but actually it has its benefits, which I'll talk about in a second. You know, compare it to this, where I can easily close it and open it with one hand. This seems a lot more tedious. Also, I tried to release the locking mechanism without the use of the cord, and believe me, it makes it very difficult. Like, I'm not joking, I'm not even sure I could do it without the cord. Yep, I can just about do it without the cord, but I'm not joking, the potential for catching your fingers in this gap here, right there, is very high. In fact, I already did pinch my finger earlier on whilst I was playing with it, and it drew blood. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put that down as a criticism. You know, they could have smoothed off the steel a bit more, so less likelihood of cutting yourself on the blasted lock. But saying that, the positive about it is I feel that's a very solid, reliable locking mechanism. It just feels reassuringly tough somehow when compared to something like the Rat 1. I definitely already can feel that this is going to be a preferable woods knife to many other styles I was looking at. One thing I didn't mention, the pocket clip is also detachable and reversible. It's only built for point down carry, so you can't have it sitting the other way around in your pocket, but this is the way I prefer to carry it anyway, so that's definitely not a problem for me at all. The knife can be disassembled with a Torx screwdriver set, probably a 5, 6 or 7, so that means you can get inside and give it a good old clean out if necessary. Let's have a little test of how sharp this blade is. Straight out the box, this is the first cut ever. Yeah, that's a pretty good level of sharpness, I'll have to say. Doesn't seem to be catching anywhere, so that's always a nice sign. When your knife comes sharp straight out of the box, you know that the person finishing the blade knew what they were doing. So those are my initial thoughts on the Pocket Bushman. Can't wait to get this bad boy out into the woods and see what it can do.
Why isn't you coming?
I am going to the temple.